Welcome to the show, guys. Hey there, business owners, directors, and marketeers. In today's show, I'm meeting Karl Gowens. I'm Lucas, your host as always. I want to tell you a little bit about Karl before we jump into the questions. So Karl is an internationally recognized expert in the field of ICT. I just chatted with him before, and he just returned from Germany, actually. So he's an expert in the field of ICT accessibility, and with that, the founder of Tenon.io. And I think it's a very interesting topic because sometimes accessibility gets overlooked in the user experience designs and the product development. So I'm really and website development, and I'm very curious to hear Karl's take on this. So Karl, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot.
Very good. So tell us about your company. What is it all about?
So Tenon started as a side project, and it started as a tool that would do automatic testing of websites. And the side project sort of morphed into my full-time job, and so we've added additional products and services to the mix. So not only do we have the product, we also do accessibility consulting, we do training, and we do audits and stuff like that too.
Very cool. So who would be the types of people that would be using the product? And maybe you can tell me a little bit about more what the product actually sort of how it helps teams when they're using it.
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, it's really focused on the developers. The tool itself is aimed at being integrated into other tooling that other people are already using. So possibly your IDE or any of your automatic task running, or even your unit testing and functional testing. So that's primarily how it works in terms of who uses it and stuff like that. We also do have a lot of QA automation engineers who are doing it, and also compliance people, because it does have a web UI as well as the API.
Okay, very cool. So would you mind to give me an example of what types of companies or what types of products would be using Tenon then?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's anybody who has a website. Now, a large portion of our customer base is actual development agencies, web agencies, and stuff like that. But in the United States, we have a really litigious atmosphere around accessibility. Lots of people getting sued for stuff. So you will find anybody who's sort of a target for that type of lawsuit, like banks, retailers, health insurance, higher education, stuff like that. Those are also pretty dominant in this space in terms of being customer based. So we have a customer base that ranges from really tiny to really massive.
Got you. Very interesting. Maybe one small follow-up question on that, because we've been speaking with a lot of folks here on conversion rate optimization on websites. Mm-hmm. Have you seen any connection of accessibility and conversion rates? Do you have any experience on that side?
So there's a lot of talk around this kind of topic that's been going on for a long time, and one of the biggest examples that's out there is discusses a case study around Legal in General in the UK, and Legal in General had spent a lot of time on improving the overall usability of their site, and that also included a lot of accessibility improvements. And the numbers that they have, unfortunately, I don't have them off the top of my head. They're really impressive. So that's kind of interesting to me. But I think in terms of the money side of things, there's another aspect too, which is that people sometimes think, oh, if you make it accessible, it's going to be more SEO friendly and all that sort of stuff, and it's going to be more mobile friendly and those sorts of things. And those also have their own intrinsic benefits. But I think there's a missed opportunity when it comes to accessibility, when it comes to capturing a new audience entirely. Mm-hmm. So in other words, you make your website that wasn't accessible, you make it more accessible, and then the part that people forget is they need to market to the people with disabilities. Users with disabilities are extremely loyal customers. Once they find a website or a product that they can use easily, they're not going anywhere, right? Because the options are pretty abysmal when it comes to accessibility. Accessibility is kind of bad on the web, and so if somebody with a disability finds, like I said, finds a product or a service that's really accessible for them, they're going to go there, they're going to tell their friends about it, and that's where you're going to get a lot of good ROI.
Very interesting. Is that do you have a percentage guess on what the products or pages are that are accessible versus there aren't? Is there some stats around that out there?
Yeah, well, we've assessed about 6 million web pages on our product, And we can say without fail that about maybe 1% of pages on the web are error-free, completely error-free.
Yep.
Now that doesn't mean that there can be probably millions of those pages that are usable, like people can actually use them, but they're still going to have errors on them. So that's kind of the hard part about gathering the data automatically, is we don't have the qualitative data of determining like what the delta is between something that has errors but is still usable versus something that's not.
Yeah, makes total sense. I would be curious then to maybe switch gears a little bit and talk about how people find Tenon. Like, what would be a typical user journey for somebody to discover the product and to get started? What would be the channels basically that they're coming through?
We've been really, really, really lucky. So prior to me founding Tenon, I was also a very active blogger and speaker. And so I generated a lot of brand awareness for myself before I started Tenon. So almost 100% of our business is inbound. And it's either inbound based upon personal reputation or inbound based upon now the product is getting its own reputation and stuff like that. So we do very, very minimal advertisement. A lot of our quote unquote marketing efforts are based on either speaking appearances by me or additional blogs or other knowledge marketing kind of activities. We post to LinkedIn, we post on our blog, we post to Facebook and stuff like that. So it's a lot of social marketing that we do, and not much paid at all.
Very, very good. Maybe you can give the listeners one tip or insight into how were you able to sort of build that personal brand? Like, how did that, if you would give somebody one tip on hand on, become somebody to actually be on the stage and talk about their topic, what would you give them as an advice?
Well, I think that knowledge share is really the way to go when it comes, especially to our industry and probably to any other tech industry. If you're selling a technical product or service, is sharing your knowledge. For me, it's been very huge way to build that brand, because basically, no matter where you are in your career, there's always going to be somebody earlier in their career. And they're going to need to learn. They're going to need to learn what they're doing. They're going to need to learn the tips and tricks of experts. And so if you can share that stuff by being involved in social media, being involved in appearances at your relevant conferences, and also writing blog posts and things like that, I think that's been one of the biggest things for me in terms of generating that awareness. And I think that you're doing two things, right? You're marketing, of course, but you're also helping to improve the experiences of others who are still trying to get to where you are.
Yep, very, very cool. Could you tell me a little bit about your own website, Tenon.io? What role does your website play in the overall sort of marketing mix?
So the website, actually, it's kind of interesting you said that, because we about 6-7 months ago we released a new version of the homepage, because our homepage that we had before was terrible at selling. It didn't explain what the product was. It didn't explain what we did or how we did it or anything like that. It was just like, here's a box, try out our product, there you go. And since then, we've gone through a redesign process that also includes the product itself. But the first part that we've unveiled so far has been the homepage, and that's really sort of your first opportunity to tell people who you are and what you're about and how you do it. And so we were very diligent about explaining sort of the three aspects of Tenon, which is testing, training, and tooling. The idea that with all three of these, you can get closer to solving your accessibility problems. And so we made that focus pretty heavy on the homepage when we did the redesign.
Very cool. And which metrics would you care about on the website? Because I'm speaking to a lot of SaaS and training and founders right now, and there's been many different metrics in the focus. What do you care about?
Well, the only thing I care about is whether they've converted to a customer or not, right? I mean, so yeah, you can do a lot of things like, for instance, paid CPC ads that'll send lots of traffic, but that might be worthless traffic, especially for us. So the things that I care about really is some of the actions that people are taking, especially in terms of how that funnel works from a person becoming a visitor to maybe using the free demo widget that we have on the site, to then registration, and then and the metrics there, like one of the metrics I calculate is the distance between first visit and registration.
Mm.
Because I want to shorten that, right? I mean, in all cases, you want to shorten the distance between the time the person registers to the time they give you money. And so that track between the first visit to the registration, and then of course from the registration to the purchase as well. But the one of the things that I focus primarily on is that first visit to registration metric. That's one of the things I want to shorten as much as possible.
Got you. And what did you learn on the way to shorten it? Any changes to the website? Any specific elements that you learned that actually helped you to sort of, get more or quicker signups then?
What's funny is in this case, in our case right now, I do believe we might have made an error in that the first visit to registration is a bit difficult right now. It's a bit longer than it was. At the same time, our value, our LTV per customer is higher. So in other words, I think we're getting less registrations, but the registrations we get are more high quality registrations. So it's still something we need to work on and try to optimize for. But yeah, that's the big thing that we found was with the prior homepage, we had boatloads of registrations because I think people thought that was the only way to use the thing, but they were not very valuable in terms of conversions.
Gotcha. Totally get that. Very, very interesting insight there, actually. But I mean, seems to be very good, at least from the one angle. Very good.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool. I would love to maybe switch gears a little bit and talk with you about a little bit about you personally as a business owner. You already mentioned that it was really helpful that you have built up your personal brand before. Maybe could you tell us how you got your first 10 customers? Because they can be very difficult for folks to get started.
Yeah. Well, what we focused on initially was we released sort of an MVP free trial on the website. It was just a single page tester, right? And so people could just go there. Anybody could go there any amount of times, and they would be a single page tester of the demo. And that was up there for about a year. And then we went invite only on a private beta, and that lasted several months while we were working out additional features and things like that. And throughout that process, that's where we got our word of mouth, right? We built up a really large mailing list along the way, and having that mailing list, I think it was at 2,000 people or something like that before we went into an open beta. And from there, it sort of fed itself in a lot of ways. So I think that if somebody's creating a new SaaS product, it definitely benefits them to have a really great landing page up front, even before their product is ready to go. If they're still working on it, if it's not ready for customers or something like that, have a good landing page with a sign up for new announcements, and then keep working on that marketing aspect and keep working on your messaging, keep working on your branding, keep working on your visuals and all that sort of stuff while you're working on it. And then from there, now you have your mailing list, and when you go live, now you can talk to these people who've really already initially indicated they were interested in you in the first place. If they've signed up for the for that, then they're ready to go. And as a matter of fact, when we actually went to pay, charging customers, we had our first 10 customers within something like 2 hours of going live because of the mailing list. Yeah.
Now, and I assume this mailing list was fed by your speaking appearances, if I tie that back to what you said earlier.
Yep. Speaking appearances and Twitter activity and stuff like that. That's another thing that I think is really important for people to recognize when it comes to social media marketing, is that people don't want to hear you feed them marketing crap all the time. They want you to be an engaged participant in the community that you're trying to get customers from. And that was another thing. So I could talk about Tenon while also being active at additional knowledge marketing along the way anyway. And so that helped as well. People were engaged because they were engaged with me anyway.
Makes absolutely sense. I would be curious, though, you as a founder, how do you how do you educate yourself in the sense that, that you're becoming a better founder today than you were yesterday? Is there certain go-to places that you check out? You mentioned Twitter there already, but what do you do in order to educate?
So I have a couple of mentors, personal mentors, who were people who were in the accessibility field already, and also who had already gone through a lot of these same things. So that's where I go. It was funny because I've done another similar podcast where the host of the podcast asked me what business books I've read, and I was like, I don't, or I haven't. I mean, now that's not entirely true. I think probably one of my favorite books is The 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel, but that's few and far between compared to the other stuff that I read. Most of my sort of education and improvement stuff is from mentors.
Gotcha. Is there specific groups or specific mentor chapters that you would join, or is it just like mentors you know through the industry?
Yeah, it's just mentors I know through the industry. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Good. Cool. I would have just like one last question since we're coming to an end of the interview. If you could move back to the days when you started Tenon, could you tell me like what would be one advice that you would give yourself that you would maybe do different, or just for sure making sure to keep it the way you did it?
One change I would make is to charge more. I think that I think I did the same mistake that other people make in SaaS, is that I was too focused on, if I charge too much, people might go away. Mm-hmm. And the truth of the matter is that we in the initial days, we charged way too little, and that we've played a lot of games with the pricing, trying to figure out what the metric is, what the price needs to be. And the truth of the matter is, right now, our smallest SaaS plan is something like 4 or 5 times as much as the initial one was. Mm-hmm. And customer lifetime value is actually up. And even though we get lower conversions from that higher price, it doesn't matter because we're still making more money. First off, we're making more money in general, and our customer lifetime value is longer. So that's the thing I would definitely say to myself.
Very interesting. You're also having the free trial there on your page. Any learnings about, or anything you could share about a length of a good trial? Because you seem to be measuring sort of that aspect pretty closely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have, in a lot of ways that's been pure guesswork. I think that one of the things that we find, especially in the tooling space, really, is that there's people who will not pay anything, right? There's people who always want a free tool. They're only going to use a free tool. They're never going to purchase anything. And then there's people who are going to buy. And for the people who are going to buy, yes, there's price sensitivity, but it's not as big as you might think. So the length of time of trial and all that sort of stuff almost doesn't matter for us, at least.
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks a lot for giving us this insight. Thanks a lot for giving us an insight about your product, your company, how you're thinking about growth, where you have come from in terms of growth. That's very interesting to hear your story about being a speaker beforehand and putting your landing page up even before the product is ready. So very, very good. So Karl, thanks a lot for taking the time today and being part of the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.